All right. Correspondent Mxolisi Masango joins us live from Durban to discuss more on the ongoing Intra-Africa Trade Fair. Thank you so much, Mxolisi, for joining us today. Hive of activity on day 3. Can you take us through what we saw today?
Absolutely, you're correct there. And of course, after all this seriousness, I might just add in a chuckle there that most delegates are hoping now to just unwind. As you can hear, even in the background, there's some sounds going there as there's a bit of a gala dinner that is happening at this point in time. Otherwise, today marked day 3 of the fair itself here in Durban. And this was set amidst, of course, the backdrop of what they termed powering Africa through regional integration. As we heard that there's been talks of how Africa has got potential to be one happy global community that supports each other. And we've seen how that, of course, manufacturers have been in talks, to ensure that there's a sustainable supply and moving of goods throughout Africa. So that's what we've been hearing throughout the course of today. There was also strong focus on the public as well as the private sector today. There has been talk of how these sectors can be merged in ensuring that Africa continues to be a well-oiled machine to compete with its European counterparts. So those were some of the talks that were being had, as well as something on the agro-processing industry. Agriculture plays a crucial role in production as well as some economies in Africa. And of course, we have been told today, and we've been hearing throughout conversations here at the fair, that agriculture is one of the biggest money spinners for some economies. And of course, there has been talks of how that needs to also be strengthened, especially seeing that Africa is rich in some of these agricultural products. And of course, talks about how we can have a good value supply chain amongst African countries. Also, the automotive financing and affordability has also come under the spotlight today. There were talks around that during some of the plenary sessions, where we've heard of how the motoring sector as well, seeing that the global community is going green and omitting gas emissions throughout the global community. There's talks now in terms of how Africa can join the bandwagon and of course also produce some of its automotives, knowing that some of these plants are already in some African countries that produce cars and so forth. And there was also that round table on the pharmaceutical industry, saying that there needs to be talk on accessing, of course, affordable medication for all African countries. And that was happening in one of the plenary sessions. This was set amidst the backdrop that medical care has become so expensive for most African countries. So talks were being had in terms of how African countries can have sustainable and affordable medical care for its people. And of course, we saw how there was also that conversation with the women of Africa, where they spoke about the opportunities as well as challenges that they face in the corporate world. They're saying that women have to work harder when being compared to their male counterparts. So those are some of the conversations in the women plenary session against, of course, with women entrepreneurs that they were having in one of the sessions. So that was basically what was happening today against that backdrop. And of course, I can tell you right now, as I've rightfully mentioned earlier on, the delegates have now decided to unwind, to a bit of some music after all that serious talk today.
Great stuff, Mxolisi. So you talked manufacturing, agriculture, automotive finance, pharmaceuticals, and a whole lot of that. Was anything said on any of these sessions about the challenges, like the infrastructure challenges that Africa faces in order to achieve this unity for trade? For instance, like agriculture, for instance, here in Nigeria, we've got issues with storage, we've got issues with route to market, with issues with roads, agricultural products that perish too quickly, lack of power to keep perishable agricultural products, at necessary temperatures for them to be able to make it to market on time before perishing. Did any of that come up as far as on the manufacturing side? Infrastructure challenges, was that brought up at all?
Absolutely. When they raised some of the challenges that Africa faces during this time, it was on the backdrop of a global pandemic that brought most industries to their knees. And of course, we were also being told how there needs to be, some sort of a resuscitation efforts that are being brought forward to ensure that the agriculture sector goes back to its former glory, as it is one of the money spinners for some African countries. For instance, here in South Africa, we've seen how the government has been, giving agriculture sector the first priority and ensuring that most people get farms, they most get cultivated land in order for them to produce crops, in order for them to nurture crops, as well as, be integrated into the supply chains by starting to supply some of the big food chains. So the conversations that were being had today is that Africa does have the skill, but now what needs to be done is that skill needs to be nurtured to ensure that we have more people being absorbed into the agriculture sector so they're able to produce for Africa. When Africa has its own fresh produce, then it means that the economy of Africa will develop.
Indeed. South Africa, really impressed with your wine industry. It's a big foreign exchange earner for South Africa. I've got a couple minutes to go, Mxolisi. I want to ask you about day 4, which is tomorrow, what we can expect. I think Nigeria Day is part of the festivities.
Absolutely, and of course that's happening tomorrow at 4 p.m. and I'm told, of course, by my colleagues at FME as well as Boston that this is going to be a spectacle of note, and we're looking forward to it. It's happening at 4 p.m. tomorrow, and they'll be focusing, of course, on the creative as well as economic brilliance of Nigeria. That will be happening tomorrow, and we're certainly looking forward to bringing it to you as it happens.
Great stuff. Mxolisi Masango, our correspondent in Durban, South Africa. Thank you for taking us through day 3 of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair in Durban, South Africa.